Okay, in this lesson, we're going to be working with surface area and proportions and finding that missing dimension when surface area is given. So the way we're going to set this up is we're going to set it up as proportions, but what you have to remember is when you are working with surface area and given another linear measure, which would be like your height or your radius, your slant length, you are going to have to square those before you can actually go through and do your cross multiplying and dividing. So I'll show you in this first one the way that the book does it, and then I'm going to show you a different technique that maybe some of you would be more comfortable with using. Still squaring, it's just that I prefer to square ahead of time. Okay, so as we look through this first one, we have two pyramids, and we have a red pyramid and a blue pyramid, and they have given us the surface area of the blue pyramid right here. So what we have to remember is because that surface area in the end, the label is squared, these linear measures that they gave us, we are going to have to square before we can actually go through and solve. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set this up as red over blue. So red over blue, and we're going to do our proportions. So we'll do our surface area and then we'll do our linear measures. Okay, so our surface area on the red, we don't know. They left that blank. So I'm just going to put a letter. I'll put an R. Okay, over our blue surface area was 600. Okay, so now our red linear measure, which is our height that they gave us, was 6, and our blue was 10. Okay, I pulled those from right here. Now, what we're going to have to understand is we're going to have to actually go through and square these linear measures. So this is kind of what the book likes to do. To me, it looks a little confusing. That's okay. We'll go through and do that in case you reference back to the book, but I will also show you another technique. So if I square 6/10, I'm taking 6 and squaring it. That's going to give me 36, and 10 squared is 100. Okay, then I have R over 600. Now I'm going to pull my calculator out and I'm going to cross multiply divide. So I'm going to take 36 times 600 and I'm going to divide that by 100. And when I do that, I get 216. So my surface area for red was 216. The units was feet, and it would be squared. Okay, so the technique that I would prefer, I personally would like to set it up. I like to put all of my information out of the red figure in one ratio and the blue figure in another. So in order to do that method, what you have to understand is you are going to have to square each of your linear measures first. Instead of in the end over there how I squared at the back side, I'm going to have to square each of these first. So I'm going to square this and square this. These are my linear measures. How do I know? This already has the squared on it. It doesn't mean I'm squaring it. It means it's already been squared and the label they are identifying shows that it's squared. So I'm going to go ahead and square. 6 squared gives me now 36 to use for that. And 10 squared is now 100. Okay, now if I set it up, I like to do my red information in one ratio and my blue in the other. So I would do maybe my linear measure over my surface area. So my linear measure was 36 over my surface area. I don't know, so I'll put an R is equal to my linear measure was 100 over 600 was my surface area. Take note, I'm still doing 600 times 36 and dividing it by 100. That's still going to give me 216. And then the label was feet squared. Okay, I like to square it first. Visually, it's just easier for me to look at. You have to decide what you want to do. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and try another one here. So even though this time it's cylinders, you're still doing that same concept. The linear measure that they're giving us on this one are 5 and 4. So I'm going to square those. I personally like to square them right away. So this now becomes a 25 and this now becomes a 16. Okay, so my red, 25 was my linear measure. I don't know the surface area. Okay, is equal to my blue, 16 over my surface area was 110. I'm now going to cross multiply, divide. So 110 times 25 divided by 16 gives me 171.875, so 0.8 centimeters squared. Okay, you'll get the same answer if you set it up the way that the book does. Okay, I'm not going to go through that numerous times because I don't want you to intermix. But if you're somebody that likes to look at the book and follow the book, then you're going to want to square afterwards. So you'll square before you do your cross multiply divide, but you'll square after you set up your proportions. Okay, so I'm going to set another one up here. I'm going to give it to you to try out. Oops. So go ahead and try this one out, set up your proportions, and then check back to see if your answer is correct. So don't forget the most important part is squaring that linear measure. Go ahead, pause your video and work through it. Okay, you should have ended up with 237.5 meters squared. Most important part on this part of the lesson, don't forget to square that linear measure, that part that's not the volume. That's the most important part to do because otherwise it's not going to give you the correct answer.